Hey, this is Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing Magic, and Mysticism. Well, today I'm going to be doing a video on spirit dolls, the terrible toys. And I want to break this up into two different categories. So there are these spirit dolls that are created without the assistance of humans. And then there are the dolls that are the spirit dolls created with some type of human intervention. So let's talk about the first kind, and I'll give you some examples, some very, I guess, popular examples from recent history. The first one, and I'm sure you are somewhat familiar with, is with the doll of Annabelle. So in case you weren't aware of Annabelle and that whole Annabelle phenomena, Annabelle is a doll that is supposedly controlled by an inhuman spirit, as termed by the Warrens. The Annabelle was investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are now both deceased. And that is all part of the Conjuring universe. You can see the Annabelle movies. There's at least 3 or 4 of them now. I think another one is about to come to theaters. I believe maybe the first 1 or 2 are actually based on history. I think the other ones are kind of more fictive. So Annabelle itself, kind of give you the scoop on the real story behind that. So Annabelle was a doll, a Raggedy Ann doll. So it isn't the very cute, pretty doll that is featured in the movies. This Raggedy Ann doll, this doll was given to a nursing student who was about to graduate. Her mom gave this doll to her. I believe it was in some type of antique shop. The nursing student's name was Donna. So Donna took this home as her graduation gift and brought it into her home with her 2 roommates. At first, everything was okay. Then they noticed some odd things started happening. In the beginning, they kind of dismissed it. They would see that they would leave Annabelle like on the bed, and they'd come back a few hours later, and it had moved slightly, changed position. Beginning, it was just like things like the legs would be crossed or something very small. As time went on, it became more apparent that the torso had moved, or some other type of body position was different, much different than the way that Annabelle was left. But back then, they dismissed a lot of little things like that. So they weren't too worried about it until Annabelle would appear in rooms from which she was not left. So she might be in the kitchen when she was originally in the bedroom. They would ask each other, hey, did you move the doll? No. I'm not sure what to make of this. And that wasn't even the most disturbing. They would occasionally get these little notes on loose leaf paper that would say phrases like, help us, or help Lou. And Lou was one of the roommates. They didn't really know what to make of this, but it disturbed them enough that they decided to consult a medium. The medium, what she said was that there was a young girl, age 7, named Annabelle Higgins, who lived before this apartment complex was built. And as a result of some type of tragedy, Annabelle died, and now her spirit is residing in the doll. So that was the explanation. So they took that information and they just went home and they went on their merry way, and things still continued. They could hear laughing sometimes in other parts of the house where Annabelle was left. So over time, this just became so obvious and very disconcerting that they decided to get some real help. So they went to the Warrens. The Warrens themselves checked out Annabelle. Lorraine is a psychic, and Ed was more of the technician, the researcher, the person who collects the data. What they told Donna and her roommates was that the spirit that they're dealing with is influencing and controlling and animating the doll. That the spirit is not within the doll, it's attached to the doll, and that the spirit is lying to the roommates, and they know what a lot of us know, and that a dead little girl doesn't inhabit dolls. That what this is happening is that the spirit is lying, is creating this story about this person named Annabelle, told the medium, and now what the ultimate plan is for this spirit to try to attach themselves through infestation and possession of one of these roommates. So what happened is they got a priest, Father Cook, who came in and did a house blessing on the apartment, which is kind of like a miniature exorcism of a place. And the roommates said, we really don't want to have anything more to do with the doll, so please take it away. So the Warrens took Annabelle, put it in their car, and drove home for safekeeping. Now, this was not without its problems. The Warrens report that on the way home, they almost got into 3 accidents. The brakes went out, the steering went out, and they almost died trying to transport this doll home. When they went to investigate the problems with the car, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with the car afterwards. So they kept it in a museum in their house along with other collectibles from their previous investigations, and they have had a priest come in once a month, bless the dolls and all the other items to try to keep it in place. Annabelle was eventually put into a glass case. For a while, people could come and do a tour of this little haunted museum. When Ed died, Lorraine had been around for a while. I believe her son-in-law was in charge of the museum and everything. They had a sign, do not tap glass, do not touch. And when people tended to violate that rule, and they have a few stories about motorcycle accidents and different things leaving the museum, people who tried to test Annabelle. So that is the Annabelle story, kind of a creepy doll. We don't know how this happened. I suspect, if you believe the Warrens' explanation, that either the spirit was already in the doll when it was bought, or maybe it was somehow attached to this location, their apartment, and attached itself to the doll at that time. Who knows? But we don't have any evidence that It was It was this type of situation was created by a magician. So let's move on to the next one. Actually, it's my favorite. This is the Robert doll. Now, Robert is my favorite. He is also in a museum, which I will get to talk about a little later. But he has a long history. He was given to Jean Otto. He was 4 years old. In 1904, was given to him by his mother. The researcher who wrote a book on him tracked down the doll, that it was a German doll, found the toy company that produced him. So Otto loved the doll, went with Robert everywhere, carried him around, played with him, took him to family events, just like any other normal little boy who is attached to a toy. I believe, if I remember, that Robert was some type of supposed to be some clown style of doll. If you see pictures of him, it's kind of a creepy looking doll. So I encourage you to go and look up photos of Robert on the net or maybe in videos on YouTube. You carry him around. However long, not long. The parents noticed some odd things, just like the roommates with Annabelle. They would hear Otto in a room playing, and then they would hear a second voice. They would go inside, look around, and that was just Otto and his toy. They would hear giggling and things in the room when the doll was left and Otto was another part of the house. There was even multiple occasions where there was a big commotion, a big fuss, crashing, things breaking, and they'd run in and they would see Otto in a corner kind of covering up, and the doll would be leaning over, standing upright, like he was punishing Otto. So they asked Otto, "What's going on?" And they say, Robert did this. So this happened multiple times. So they had to kind of keep an eye on things. They might not even believed Otto that it was the doll. Probably thought it was him. So there was a period where things were quiet. Otto grew up. He got married, and for some reason he went and got the doll. He kind of for nostalgic sake, I guess. And their friendship was on. Brought him into his house with his wife. Same sort of thing. Oh, let me back up. This is important too. After all this commotion was happening when Otto was little, there was an aunt. His aunt was there, and she just had enough. So she convinced the parents to put Robert upstairs in the attic. The next day, the aunt died of a stroke. At that point, they took Robert out of the attic and gave him back. It's like they're already starting to make concessions to Robert. Okay, back to where I was. So he got married. He brought Robert into his house, and the same sort of thing happened. There was a lot of laughing and giggling. He just like Annabelle would move from room to room, even when he wasn't placed there. Eventually, what happened was that Robert died in 1970. Excuse me, Otto died in 1974. His wife, at that point, was just tired of Robert and decided to sell the house. So she sold the house and left Robert there in the attic. the new inhabitants of the place would hear a lot of noises and laughter and giggling and rustling in the attic. So eventually things would happen where they would get locked out of their rooms in their house, couldn't open them. They knew the doll was there, but they just said, you know, we've had enough. So they gave it to a museum. So now you can actually go and visit Robert at this museum. He's not even at the museum. He's caused a little bit of a stir. They've noticed that he does change position, and yet no one notices him change position. They just come back and they see him something different. They've also had they have a lot of visitors come and see him. There are rules though whenever you visit Robert. One is that you must say hello, you must say goodbye, and you must ask permission to take a photo with him. Again, Robert has this power that people try to almost supplicate themselves to them. He has letters, fan mail, and around him where he sits, they have letters on the wall. Because in a sense, they're very afraid of him. If you even go and look at some videos and stuff, sometimes you'll start to see people make comments about Robert or ask for things, or it's very strange. It's almost like he's Saint Expedite on my Saint Expedite video. You know, thanks Saint Expedite for so and so. You'll start to people to relate to this doll like he has some type of really strong spiritual power and is very much alive. So it's an interesting type of thing. So that concludes the spirits the spirit dolls that they have a spirit attached to them, but we don't have any evidence that they were placed there by a human. So now what the other side of it is, there are those who practice necromancy and magic who try to intentionally lure a spirit into a particular object. It can be a bottle, it can be a doll. Now, different ways to do this. For one, what you'd have to do, let's say that you wanted to create a doll for prosperity and abundance. What you would do is you might gather whatever item that you want to be for the doll. You can make it yourself, or that doesn't even matter. You can have your own. Then you could use, let's say, a wealth situation. You can contact a planetary power such as Jupiter to send a spirit to you in meditation. At that point, you might do something like get the sigil of that particular spirit, take the sigil, write it on a piece of paper, write a petition on a scrap of paper, take that, maybe cut a hole in the doll, put it inside the doll, and then close it up. And close it up with something like candle wax or something if you wanted to use that, or if you can sew, depending on the material of the doll. At that point, what typically happens is, if you wanted to keep it there, to almost trap it, you can put like some glyphs of Saturn, maybe Mars in combination. And you know that's basically it. It's a deal between you and the spirit. But that's not the only way. It's just coming off the top of my head, how one might go about this. The bigger point of this is the fact that there are people who intentionally do this for either, for their own, say for their own magical, part of their own magical work, or for profit. I mentioned this before in other videos. There are those who sell these spirit dolls on eBay and Etsy. And they sometimes come at an expensive price. And they'll come up with a history and everything, and it looks all nice. I get a lot of sometimes complaints and comments from people that saying how different other magicians and stuff have scammed them. And I believe that this spirit doll thing is wrought, maybe that's a better word, using proper English, with fraudulence and people scamming other people. So be very careful when you do this. I don't even know how eBay and PayPal even handle this when people complain, I got a doll and it doesn't have a spirit in it. You know, they told me that, you know, this is false advertising. You know, what is the eBay going to get like an EMF meter and, you know, check it for them? And, you know, that doesn't even always work to detect spirits. So what I always tell people is that if there's some type of spirit phenomena, spirit doll stuff, learn how to kind of do it yourself. And that way you're kind of responsible and you can kind of learn how to do it, and you won't have to rely on other people who may be just out there trying to take your money. And I believe that that is true. In fact, I was thinking about doing a video on this whole phenomena about the scamming and how to possibly look for red flags and stuff like that. Because it isn't like that a lot of this stuff is really measurable and you can tell exactly what you're getting. Make sense? All right. I am going to put some links in the description. Thanks for listening. And I will see you all another time. I'm thinking about doing a live streaming next week. Okay? Talk to you later. Bye-bye.